Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, and so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show. Booyah!
Here we are.
Weird day.
Yes. By the way, we just took off our masks. We're being extra careful right now, especially because I got to get on a plane. I'm getting on a plane in 7 hours. I cannot get COVID. I had a freaking kidney stone.
Yeah, man.
Anyway, we'll get to all that. By the way, our big voice announcer guy, he's a liar. It would not take him an hour to announce all of the names.
No, it's pretty sparse.
Yeah, it would take about 45 seconds.
Exactly.
That's about it. It's a big lie. We see Jason Lloyd is coming with us remotely today. Jason, how are you? What's going on?
I'm playing hurt, too. I got a little cough, sniffle. It's not COVID. I've taken 3 COVID tests in the last 4 days. Went on vacation and got sick. So that
nice.
was great. Back home now.
Well, maybe you learn your lesson never to go to Alabama again. Mike Polk, what's up with you?
I'm happy to be here. What a horrific, weird world we live in. Thank you for noting the configuration, everybody. There's just 3 of us here today, and Jason's via remote, sick as a dog, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, right. Everybody's hanging in there.
But we are here anyways.
Yes! To
give
bring you all the sports talk. Robert Smith today.
All the sports
Mary
talk.
Kay Cabot today, and maybe Aditi. And, of course, G. Bush back in studio. G, what's going on with you?
Yes, man. You know, I'm back out of the penthouse. Yesterday was the penthouse.
Gorgeous place.
See, Bull, they didn't tell me I look good in this little 3 camera over here. They didn't gave me my money. Hold on. Let me set up real quick. Y'all need to set me up like this. But we in the building. We're going to talk about a lot of good stuff going on today. Not really, though.
No, not good stuff.
Not good stuff. But we're going to talk about a lot of interesting stuff as we get going. So keep it live.
Doesn't this feel like more and more of a support group every single day for all of us? Like,
My
like
name
some sort
is
of
Adam the Bull,
some
and I'm a
sad
compulsive
AA
gambler.
meeting. Some sad AA meeting.
Yeah, very sad.
Yep.
Very sad.
But we're here for you, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
And so's Jason.
Obviously, the big news of the day, G, was what was announced yesterday, that Deshaun Watson suspension will be appealed. Maybe we all thought it wouldn't happen. I can't remember if you didn't think it would happen, Mike.
No, I thought it would happen.
You thought it would happen. So Mike was the only one.
Yeah.
The rest of us, I think, maybe conned ourselves into believing it wasn't going to happen. G, I know you have some first thoughts on this.
Well, I will say this. It's not so much about the extra suspension. You know, that's part of the process, and we'll see what the NFL Players Association will do to combat that. We'll talk about it a little bit today. But what I want to get to is the attitude around some of the things that we consistently see. When I was on the way home, I happened to be listening to the radio. And on the radio, an individual, young person, or I don't even think he's that young, but an individual basically said something to the effect of, you know, they were talking about how the system seems to be different for different people, right? And somehow he came up with the words and ideas to say, well, a little along the line of, well, just don't get in trouble. You know, all you got to do is don't get in trouble. And for me, as an African-American male, those type of comments rub me the wrong way. They rub me smooth wrong way. Now, I want to give a couple statistics here, and I want to keep going, and I want to approve a point before we get to the rest of our stuff. And I just want to show people a little something. Black Americans are incarcerated in state prisons across the country at nearly 5 times the rate as whites. In 2019, the median white household income was $188,000, which is 7.8 times of the typical black household. Median black male worker earns 74% as much as the median white worker. In 2016, over 70% of Asian and black workers in Great Britain and the United States said they had experienced racial harassment at work in the previous 5 years. On average, black American and Hispanic workers with the same education level and the same degrees earn only 80% of those of whites. 42% of employees in the U.S. have experienced or witnessed racism in the workplace, and for Glassdoor's 2019 Diversity and Inclusion Study. The issue that you get down to here is this is the most powerful point. 93% of white workers do not believe racism or ethnic discrimination exists in their workplace or in their country. That's a wide divide and a wide gap. When you hear people say, just don't get into trouble, we hear that a lot. When I get pulled over and African Americans get pulled over, they just say, just comply. Do what they tell you to do. Just do. There has been a situation in our country where African Americans live on two different playing fields, two different systems. It is very evident that happens a lot of different places. My point is, as individuals, we have to be more sensitive and understanding of what the plight is. In the case of Deshaun Watson, yes, he did something incorrect, and we all agree with that. But we almost have to come to the conclusion that just because Deshaun Watson did something and he needs to be punished for it, the system has to be fair and equitable, and they have to take care of the same things that happen with other people under that same policy. I'll end with this. I don't sleep very much. And the reason I don't sleep very much is because of those statistics. When I got into this game, I came from nowhere. I've been here 12 years. I have 2 degrees from Ohio University, marketing communication. I graduated with honors from Ohio Center for Broadcasting. I had a 1.5-year internship. I played football. I'm a national championship in high school. I'm in my high school Hall of Fame. I'm a 4-year letterman from Ohio University. I've worked in corporate America for 8 to 10 years in middle management. On credentials alone and work ethic alone, I will be honored to say that no one is working harder than me, and I'll stake my claim to it. And the reason I work that hard is because I have to be the representation of people that kids can make it, that look like me, that come from where I'm at. There's 3 African Americans that do radio. There's 3 African Americans that are prominent in the media. That is a powerful statement. 70% of the people in football, in sports, are African American. For you to be able to articulate what African Americans go through, you first need to have people that are able to represent that and give that point of view. Lastly, I call myself the people's champion because I am a representation of the people. And if I'm a person with all of those credentials, a mother and a father who have college education, and I can't make it, and I can't be where I'm supposed to be, and I can't exceed and reach the stars, then what hope does somebody who doesn't have those things come from a country and come from parents who don't have that background? That's the burden you carry as being the only one. That's the burden you carry when you watch stories, and every single time you turn on the TV, it's somebody like you doing that, getting that light, being shed that way, and you just have to deal with it, get over it. Well, I'll tell you this. As part of my responsibility is, much is given as much is required, I'm never going to sit back and let people tear down people unnecessarily. If you do something wrong, hey, we all for it. But at the end of the day, my job is checks and balances. If we're going to talk that way for this person, we got to talk that way for that person. And that's what my mantra is. That's what I stand on. And that's why that championship belt means more than me, than what people think. It's deeper than sports. It's life. And so that's what I want to say as we keep it moving. We'll talk about Deshaun Watson and a lot of other things, but we have to watch and we have to understand the context in which we talk about certain items and when it comes to people of color and the way we perceive them in the media.
Wow, powerful stuff. Well said. I have, nothing for us to say about that.
No?
I don't know. G made his point. I don't know. We need to. But I do have one thing. Do you want to call out the person who said that?
He works at ESPN in Cleveland. I'm gonna keep it classy. I'm gonna keep it classy.
By the way, the one stat you gave, all of that, none of those stats were surprising, except for the last one, that you said 92% of white Americans don't think there's discrimination in the workplace. I find that one impossible to believe, because most of the white people I know, like Mike and myself and others, but if that's the bubble I'm in with that type of people.
We're also in Cleveland,
we all
Ohio.
understand that these things happen. So 92% seems impossible.
That's why it's so important that I talk about diversity. There's no reason that I should be the representation of an entire culture, because there's more people out there qualified to do what we do. And it's just not right.
Yeah.
Those are horrifying statistics.
Yeah.
I will say this, in fairness, if I ever hear of Baker Mayfield, accused by 25 different women of sexual inappropriateness, I'm going to go after him. I'm going to be mad at him, and I'll understand if they throw the book at him. I hope they do. So I can't speak from your perspective, obviously, and I don't pretend like I'm able to or anything like that. But I do know that you're very emotionally wrapped up in this, and I do know that comes from a history that I haven't had and can't experience. But I do wonder how much of how much of this has a racial component to it and how much of it doesn't. I would like to. There's no way of doing a direct comparison. That's the ultimate problem with this whole process, is that there is no other comparison to this that we can look back in the league that's like an apples to apples or even apples to any other kind of fruit situation, because it is so unprecedented. But so these questions are always going to be there because we don't have a direct comparison that we can make. So it's always going to be, how much of this is influencing that? What is the racial aspect of this?
Right.
And we just don't have anything that we can point to say, well, here's an example where that wasn't the exact same thing, because we're trying to compare it to Tom Brady deflating footballs. These are slightly different crimes.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the Ben Roethlisberger situation, even that's not the same. Actually, what Roethlisberger was accused of is far more serious than what Deshaun Watson's accused of. However, you talk about different amount of numbers. I don't know if that matters, because ultimately the league, in this case, what the judge was looking at was only 4 cases. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think Roethlisberger would be the closest thing.
Yeah.
From my perspective, where I'm coming from, just to be clear, it's not just the isolated incident with Deshaun Watson.
But you understand that's what we're thinking of and talking about right now.
Right.
So
it's natural to make that conclusion.
Yeah, so let me clarify. So when you talk about the racial component of what we're talking about with Deshaun Watson, you have to also take it in context and look at other parts. So not only is it Deshaun Watson with some of the statistics, let's talk about the statistics of African-American coaches, right? You have a coach that has a lawsuit that says he was told to lose games. And he was fired after having 2 winning seasons. Then, during the process, we put the Rooney rule in place to adjust and to pivot to some of these things, to try to adjust them. Well, that's turned out to be a sham as well. You have coaches and owners going to other players saying, "Hey, you already got the job before you even interview a black candidate."
Yeah.
You talk about the limited positions in college football as well as the NFL. Less than 10% in all college coaching jobs are black African Americans. Now, ask this question. How can you have 70% of your base football players,
Your workforce,
70% is black?
Yeah.
And yet and still on the reverse side, when it comes to leading, organizing, being in leadership, it's less than 10%. How is that possible? Are you telling me that every 70% of black people don't want to coach? They don't have the experience level? They don't have the know without? Why are the numbers skewed to the point where you have to have a policy in place that says you at least have to even interview them?
Yeah, and the policy's not working, right? And I don't know that issue, and obviously we weren't planning on talking about that, but you brought it up, so I do want to talk about it before we get back to the Watson appeal. But it's such a complicated issue, how to solve this problem of lack of black coach representation in the NFL.
It's undeniable. It's huge.
And obviously there's racism there. That doesn't mean all the owners are racist. Obviously all the owners are not racist. But what I said yesterday is, if you're a 70-year-old white guy and your circle of people is a bunch of old white guys, then even if you consciously have no racism, like you're not a racist, right? You don't think any bad things about black people or whatever. Even subconsciously, you're like, well, when I interview a guy, I might just feel more comfortable with this guy. You might not even realize
talks like
it.
I talk.
Right,
this
but
guy,
you're just used to being around this guy.
Yeah. I know him from the yacht club.
Exactly, and so you may not be overtly racist at all. You may not be racist at all, and yet it's still an inherent advantage for the white coach. And I don't know how to solve that problem.
Jason, solve all these problems. Jason Lloyd, solve all these problems.
Well, there is a way that goes a long way in solving it, and that's to get black representation and ownership. And that's really where the change is going to come in. When you get more black representation at the highest level, it'll trickle down from there. I've thought that for a long time. It's cracking that nut. And really not even at the ownership level, but we saw it with Derek Jeter. Look what Derek did when he went to the Marlins at a really high level at the presidential level, and bringing in the first woman in a front office position, and the way he diversified the Marlins. That's how you have to go, as far as I'm concerned. And I give Jimmy Haslam credit. I've been hard on Jimmy for a lot of things, but when you look at the black coaches that he's brought in, the black GMs that he's brought in, you can bang on the Haslams for a lot, but they have given a lot of opportunities to African American head coaches and GMs.
That's true.
And I'll just say this really quickly, because I don't want to go down a whole rabbit hole with the whole thing, because we want to stay on topic here. But I look at a couple things. When you talk about racism, it doesn't have to be isolated to penalties and policy. It doesn't have to be automated to hiring. The most egregious thing that the NFL has done, and they've admitted to it, they've said basically in the CTE concussion settlement, they have a settlement of funds and pools and different things that you give out to players who have CTE, dementia, things like that. The league has started with racial norming, and racial norming, I'm gonna give you an example. They say they start with the premise that African Americans are at a lower cognitive level than white people. That's the premise. They use that to then say, well, since you can't show cognitive loss because we already thought you were dumber than a white person.
Who is this starting at this starting point?
This is in the CTE concussions.
In the CTE, so these are doctors making this claim?
Yes, doctors.
Okay. I just didn't know who we were talking about.
Yeah, doctors, and the league has come out and said to themselves, yeah, we probably shouldn't be using racial norming. However, we don't have anything better to use in order to give out the settlements. So what you have is a disproportionate effect as black Americans go and try to get aid, try to get CTE money. And they're saying, well, we can't give you any 50,000 claims denied because they're saying, well, you can't show cognitive loss because we already thought you were dumb anyway.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that.
Now, how is that in your policies? And yet I can sit here and look at the rest of this stuff and say, oh, everything's above board. You've admitted to it, and it's there. So my thing is this. It's just not the Deshaun Watson thing. Sometimes we have to look past at it and actually say to ourselves, could there be something here? It's not saying it's guaranteed, but could there be a lens in which this has skewed the way we look at the NFL in our systems?
Well said. Jason, let's jump in with you on Deshaun Watson here. Why do you think the NFL decided to appeal ultimately? Like, whoever's ultimate decision what this was, Roger Goodell, a consortium of owners, why do you think they ultimately decided to do it? Because if they don't appeal, even though there's some verbal and written backlash, the story essentially goes away if they don't appeal. Right? I mean, we're no longer waiting for anything at this point. And instead, the story's going to now continue endlessly. So why do you think they did it?
It's pretty clear they weren't happy with 6 games. They wanted more than 6 games. And I didn't think they would appeal. I wrote that while I was on vacation, that I thought that they would let it lie because this is the system that Roger wanted. Roger wanted the heat off of him, and he didn't want to be responsible for this. There's so much complicated factors around the Roethlisberger case, the Ezekiel Elliott case, Tom Brady deflating. He caught so much heat for that he really wanted off of that, and so that's why they came up with the system that they have. And I saw right before we went on, Mike Florio with a report from a source that Roger will appoint someone outside of the league office to hear the appeal. I'm really happy that that's the case because I was sitting here all morning going, it's a rigged system. It's a completely rigged system. If Roger's going to hear the appeal on this or anyone else from the league office, then this whole system is a sham. And if I'm Sue Robinson, I go to him and say, you know what, I'm out. Because if this is the way it's going to be, you're not going to sully my name like this. You're not going to use me in a manner like this. So I'll be curious to see who they appoint to hear the appeal. And the NFL's within their right to appeal. They are, just like, Deshaun could have appealed if he wanted to. But I'm curious to see who's going to hear it. And I'm really glad that it's not going to be anybody from the league office because Jason, it just felt like this was a rigged system.
That brings up a good point. With Sue Robinson, both the NFL and the NFLPA got to decide and agree upon her. In this case, it's exclusively the NFL who gets to pick this arbiter, right?
I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah, which is interesting because if Deshaun had appealed, he would have appealed to who? Roger.
So it would make sense.
So it is still
they're probably going to pick somebody who would, at least consider them
be on their
favorable.
side.
So let me ask you guys this. You said, Jason, you're happy that the report from Florio is that it'll be somebody outside of the league. I think we're all happy to hear that. However, do we have faith that this person, whoever it may be, is going to be as impartial as Judge Robinson? Because I'm skeptical. Mike?
Skeptical is kind.
The reason that I have a little bit of faith in it more isn't because I think the NFL is going to not be cynical about it and do the right thing. I think it's because they know. I think it's for the same reason that I felt like they were going to appeal. It's not because they want to do the right thing. It's because they're reading the temperature of the room and they're reacting accordingly. And they know that we're watching every move. I think that they would, if they had their druthers, they wouldn't have appealed. But they saw the pushback from this nationally. Yeah. They heard, they're following, they're on Twitter. They're seeing what's going on. They read the temperature and they said, we have to appeal. This is for the reputation of the league. This is a moment that we have to meet by doing this, whether we want to or not. It's going to be uncomfortable, but the discomfort that the league is going to feel isn't as bad as the discomfort the league would have felt in every way if they would have let this slide as it is. I don't think they're being noble. I don't think they deserve the credit for that. And in that same way, I think that this arbiter that they pick, we're going to be watching. If Roger Goodell's like, hey, it's my brother, Steve Goodell. He's going to be the outside arbiter. He doesn't work for the NFL. Nobody's going to buy that. They're going to have to get somebody where we're all going to look at this person's credentials. We're all going to see who they are and if they have any kind of a history with the NFL and representing them and stuff like that. So I think they're going to at least ostensibly have to pick somebody that will be not totally in the bag for them.
You're not buying that?
It's a sham.
Yeah.
Let's be real. Like you got a judge who's been in the courtroom for 25 years. She took a look at both sides. She came to a conclusion, and she gave you her judgment. You said, well, that's okay. It's okay. It's not that big a deal. Let's pick somebody else. Is the Players Association going to get a chance to pick? No, it's just the guy. Trust me, he's going to be fair and equitable. That's what they're going to do. Now, here's the problem. If you look at other cases, right? Let's go look at, there's a couple other precedents that are nice little nuggets. So in the John Gruden case, John Gruden went to court and said, I under no circumstances want to go into mediation with the NFL because it is a sham. Because Roger Goodell is going to eventually be able to say whatever he wants to. Judge said, you know what? We're going to let your case go in court and you don't have to go to mediation. Flores argued the same thing. I refuse to go to mediation because of the way the mediation is set up, that Roger Goodell is ultimately going to be able to make it go away or do whatever he wants. Judge in that case said, you're right. No arbitration, continue on with the process. Two judges have looked at the arbitration process and said, well, this doesn't look above board, kind of. Yeah. And so why would I believe that all of a sudden you're going to pick a guy out of a bag that's more qualified than Sue Robinson?
Here's the only problem, guys, with this situation. The Players Association, now, maybe they'll end up going to federal court, and maybe this will be the big thing we think it might be. And I hope it does, and I hope they stick it to the NFL owners. My one concern about that is the players agreed to this system.
Yep.
We didn't, at the time, when we were worried about a lockout, we were looking at like salary cap and all these things. We weren't really looking at this. This was an afterthought for us at the time. You were not looking at every detail. I can't for the life of me understand why the players would have agreed to this. There should have, to me, what was the NFL? Let's say what they should do was you go to Judge Robinson. And if you want to appeal, then you appeal to another independent person selected by the commissioner and the players. And then the second appeal that's it. You get one appeal, and that's the end of it. And why the players didn't push for that little extra? What was the league going to shut down the league for that? I mean,
so this is all J.C. Treader's fault, is what you're saying.
I mean, the players
this is all Treader's fault.
The players have put themselves in this situation, and if I'm Judge Robinson, I'm ticked. That, as Jason said before, because I feel like I've been used as a pawn.
Hey, Jason, would the NBA Players Association have took that deal?
I don't know, because I wasn't I wasn't part of the negotiations. I think you have a valid point, but at the same time, the players in the NFL always cave.
They do.
on issues like this. It's the weakest union, really, of all of them. Of the three, I don't know anything about hockey, but of the three that we have here in town, NFL is like I've said this before. I had Browns players in the locker room back when we were allowed in the locker room pre-COVID, saying like, "There's changes coming, and we're going to fight. We're going to do this. We're going to do that." And I'm like, "Okay," and then they all rolled over on everything. Yeah, because they always do. So, it does feel like a rigged system in a lot of ways. And I think that the NFL probably told them this is the way it's going to be. And they just said okay, like they do on so many other issues.
I think a big difference with the NBA, though, is, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, the players and not David Stern, and Adam Silver have a pretty good relationship, right? I mean, there's mutual respect there, I believe, as opposed to in the NFL.
Adam has done a really nice job of forging relationships with the game's biggest stars. Yeah. LeBron loves him. And it doesn't mean he agrees with all of his decisions, but he has a deep respect for him, and he can pick up the phone and get Adam on the phone anytime he wants. And it's just not him. All of the game's biggest stars, Adam's done a really nice job of having open lines of communication with them. He wants to hear from them. He values their input on things. And I think probably of all the three, the commissioner, Adam has handled, of all the commissioners in the major sports, Adam has handled those relationships with the players the best of all of them. Baseball hates Rob Manfred. The NFL hates Roger Goodell. But the NBA players really do respect and like Adam Silver.
I'll tell you what, Boo. He said something, Jason said something that I completely wholeheartedly agree with. And you said too, hey, you signed it, right? Yeah. Anybody tell you not to sign that? Come on now. Like that's part of negotiation. And one of the things I always talk about people is you don't get what you deserve. You get what you can negotiate. And you should have known, given the history of what this league has been doing, why would you sign up for that?
It's amazing.
Now, I will say this too, though, and it is where I was getting at. The problem is the Players Association has some cracks. They don't have all the leverage. They have some areas they can pry in, but I don't think, to Jason's point, I don't think they got the heart. We talking about it with Democrats all the time. They don't fight the same way Republicans do traditionally. They go in and they get what they need to get done. Other leagues, other NFL, Players Association, they go to the mat. In the words of OG, I don't know if the Players Association is ready to peel back the covers and really go and say, no, we're going to take this drag out. I don't think they haven't shown it yet. I haven't seen in the history of it.
I think the reason they made this deal, though, was the NFL, like you said, they dominate their players for the most part more than any other union in league's union. But I think that the union said, at least this is a layer of protection that we didn't have before. It used to just be whatever Roger said, then that's what it ended up being. Yeah. They said, we'd rather have a half loaf rather than none, and they said, well, at least we'll take this arbiter, it'll be more public, it'll be an independent person, hopefully it won't come to that next level, but even if it does, there will be more attention paid to this, and they are getting more attention paid to it than they would have otherwise if it just would have been like it used to be with the NFL just saying, well, here's what we decided, so take us to federal court.
And the NFL would do it without, there was no 15-page brief as to why they would do it.
Right.
And whoever they end up getting to hear this appeal, I would imagine there's going to have to be something written there. It can't just be like old school NFL. Well, now it's 10 games or 12 or whatever. Now maybe it will be. I know you look scared. You might be right. Like they just might do whatever they want. But
they gave her this job, though, and they did what they did was they limited her greatly in her ability to actually follow through on what she found. Because again, she came out and said everything the NFL accused him of, in my opinion, from what I've seen, he is guilty of.
Right.
But based on the parameters that they have given me, that I'm allowed to sentence on, this is the most that I can do. Now, you guys can take it from here and do what you want, but this is how I'm limited. Your system is jacked up. Yes. You guys were terrible at making this system, but this guy also did some creepy stuff that I find incredibly creepy based on my the 4 people that I've talked to and everything that I've seen. I think they've made their argument. But this is all I can do. Ball's in your court. You guys are a disaster. Bye, I'm Sue.
Mikey Mc... Yeah, I think you're 100% right.
Sue's out.
Mikey Mc... By the way, the fake Sue Robinson on Twitter, have you guys seen this?
Yes, I have.
I just found out that I know the person who... Well, I don't know the person, but I know the the person's boyfriend.
This is the weirdest name drop I've ever heard. That might have been the worst name drop.
It's terrible.
You know the boyfriend of a fake Twitter account.
I know,
holder.
boyfriend of the fake Twitter account.
Look at this, guys.
But it's very funny. Check it out. I retweeted one today that was really good by the fake Dr. Sue Robinson, or Judge Sue Robinson. Mikey McNuggets, what do you have for us?
I got a question for you that's based off an internet comment we got, so let's do a little PCC Airfoils love real quick.
Yeah.
Are you looking for a job with career advancement and great benefits? PCC Airfoils is a leading manufacturer in Northeast Ohio. All locations of PCC Airfoils in Eastlake, Mentor, Wickliffe, and Minerva are hiring for all positions at $18 and up, plus full benefit packages, paid time off, and a signing bonus. Apply online at precast.com/careers to learn more. Mary Kay should be hopping on with us in a sec.
PCC, PCCCC, PCC. No,
Yeah, that was fun, though.
I didn't feel
Just
that.
didn't have anywhere to go.
I forgot. I had a particular song in my head, like a classical music song, and just as I was about to start, I lost the rhythm. And
then you just
happens.
remixed it.
And
That's
I just
okay.
rambled.
Well, anyway, still great
Go ahead.
product. Great place to
Great
work.
product.
PCC. Go ahead.
So yesterday,
Yeah.
this is what Mike Florio tweeted after he read the NFL statement. He said, pretty much in a nutshell, Watson's going to be suspended for a lot longer than 6 games. So I know we don't have any information, but what do you think is the result of this appeals process? Will Watson end up missing more than 6 games? If so, how much? How do you see this playing out?
I am going to. By the way, I've seen a few things about. Well, part of their beef is they want him out for the Texans game. Which, if that's true, that's absurd. Number one. Number two, it's once again proof that they're not doing anything noble.
Nope.
It's all about PR.
Yep.
Number three, why wouldn't they have made that game earlier in the year? I'm going to remain at least somewhat optimistic. I know everybody's doom and gloom right now, and I get it. I understand the doom and gloom about him playing. I'm going to say that it ends up being 8 games, as I was saying all along. They had 2 more games, and he gets a massive fine. So not many more games, 2 more games, and a massive fine. That's what I'm going to say.
Jason?
But I'm just guessing at this point, obviously.
What do you think, Jace?
Man, I have no idea. I would say it's not looking good for the Browns at this point. I think it's probably going to be 10 to 12 games and possibly the entire season. I think that's very much in play. We've heard all along that that's what the NFL wanted, and they're not going to stop until they get it.
This is so there's like a 2-track thing right here, right? So if Roger Goodell is ultimately changing the decision and appointing someone else, when you look at labor law, right, judges in the appellate courts are very strict about changing awards of arbitrators. Now, which arbitrator is it? Is it going to be? Is Roger Goodell the de facto arbitrator, right? Is because he stepped in and said, I'm going to appeal it? Or is Sue Robinson, is she on record as being the arbitrator? Because if you look at it, when they appeal it and the NFL Players Association goes to a judge, they're going to say, traditionally, in this country, we don't overturn arbitration decisions unless there's corruption, unless the person had gross negligence, or there was certain levels of misinformation or misdeeds, right? So with that being said, you'll see who's going to be the arbitrator. If Roger Goodell is, it'll be hard for them to overturn it because he's the end arbitrator. If they're going to say the initial arbitration was made by Sue Robinson, the Players Association has a little wiggle room to say you're overturning that, and that you shouldn't do that by precedent.
Real quick, we're going to go to Mary Kay. But guys, how many games it's going to end up being if you had to guess?
Man, I would say he might not get suspended this year if they get an injunction.
I think he's out for the season. I think they're going to make a point of this right now. I think it's too public, and I think that he's out for the year.
By the way, for the record, even if he's suspended for the season, I still would have made the trade. Mikey McNuggets, go ahead.
We got a guest joining us via the Gridiron Guys hotline. The click worked. Yup.
There it is.
Are you looking for a local roofer you can trust?
Am
Family
I?
owned since 2003, the Gridiron Guys have grown to become Northeast Ohio's top-rated roofers. They exemplify quality work practices and are a valued resource for homeowners while offering a 10-year workmanship warranty. Call 330-573-7967 today for a free estimate or roof inspection.
Gridiron Guys.
Nice.
Now
Very
we got Mary Kay Cabot.
Mary Kay Cabot, Cleveland.com. Mary Kay, how are you? Good to see you. What's going on?
I'm doing really well, guys. How's everybody doing?
You know, Mary Kay, I said this morning on my podcast in terms of how we're doing. It's like we were all holding our breath, waiting for a decision for months and months. It finally comes on Monday. We all took a breath and said, okay, now we know. And then 2 days later, now we don't know anymore. And it's still even more up in the air than it was before. We have no clue where it's going to go from here. Do you feel that way too?
Well, I really don't think anybody should have had any sense of security after Monday that anything was settled. I mean, we knew that both sides had the opportunity to appeal, and anybody that thought the NFL was not going to exercise its collectively bargained right to appeal was probably in denial. They fought hard for a year.
We were in denial.
They wouldn't accept 12. So, of course, they were going to appeal. It was their right. And, I actually don't blame them for appealing. I think the NFLPA would have done the exact same thing if they weren't going to like the result.
Mary Kay, at what level, because we prognosticated, there's filing lawsuits, but then there's filing lawsuits, like expansive, wide sweeping lawsuits. I haven't seen the players union, and talking to Jason about this, I haven't seen the players union really exert themselves in that way when it comes to specifically lawsuits. I don't know if the Players Association is willing to go knockdown, drag out. What is your sense on that?
Oh, I think they're definitely willing to go knock down, drag out. Absolutely, 100%. This is an absolute battle between these two entities. And it was one of the perhaps unintended consequences of the reformation of the policy, that it just gets ugly between the NFLPA and the NFL now. And this thing is contentious, and they're both going to fight it out. And I think that they will use all of their resources to get what they want on both sides. For the NFLPA, that means probably suing if they have to. But there's something that can happen before that. That's what I think should happen, and that is that the two sides should get together and negotiate again.
Yes.
Get back to the negotiating table and come up with something that works for everyone.
I would argue that 12 games has been mentioned. You just mentioned it, got brought up, Mary Kay. In a way, don't you think 12 games is the worst case scenario? Not for Watson, but 12 games is really the worst case scenario for the Browns, because if he's suspended for the whole year, the only good thing about that is that his contract tolls. And so you still have him under team control for 5 years. Whereas if it's 12 games, the season is, in my opinion, sunk. You never know. But in my opinion, it's sunk if it's 12 games. And yet you still really only have him for 4 years. So if you were the Browns down deep, if the suspension was going to be 12 games, would you rather it just be the whole season? Or do you think they wouldn't do that?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a little bit of just ambiguity in the policy about whether or not the contract would toll. And I've been trying to get an answer on this for a long time. In the new policy, the revised policy, it looks to me like there is a distinction between an indefinite suspension and banishment. In the olden days, they were one and the same. If you were indefinitely suspended for a minimum of a year, you were banished from the league and had to apply for reinstatement. Now, the way that I'm reading the policy, and nobody will clarify it for me, at least not yet, is that it seems like there is such a thing as an indefinite suspension and that there is also banishment. So I've been trying to ask, when does the contract toll? When does it not? I know it would in banishment. I don't know if it does in indefinite suspension. So there might be a little wiggle room in that designation. Still trying to figure that out. So it's hard to answer that question until I know the ramifications of an indefinite suspension. But I think the NFL had to come at it from this standpoint. I think they had to come back at it hard and say indefinite for a minimum of a year, because if you're going to sit down and negotiate again, which is what everybody really kind of, I believe, hopes will happen, you can't come in at 12 and hope to end up at 12. You've got to come in at a year and hope to end up somewhere that you can feel comfortable with, and the same thing with the NFLPA.
Mary Kay, it's almost like the NFL keeps that language ambiguous to suit their needs sometimes, doesn't it? Isn't that strange, where they can kind of keep it up in the air?
Well, sometimes there is a little bit of wiggle room in the policy, and I found that out through the whole Josh Gordon saga. I mean, it just always seemed that it wasn't going according to the letter of the policy, and it was always a little bit different than it was precisely written. And so this is a nuance that that I'm trying to figure out. And when I do, I'll let you guys know. I'll text Adam or Garrett or something and let you guys know so that you can clarify it, tomorrow. But because I think it is an important distinction.
Yes, definitely.
Because you're right, Adam. I mean, if you're going to lose the whole year. And you can toll that to next year, and then you have his rights. It's not just the money. It's
Right.
that you would have his rights for 5 years after a banishment. Then you would probably prefer that over 12 games.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jason.
Mary Kay, okay, so he's out a minimum of 6 and they're appealing. What does this do with his status with preseason games? I was talking to Zach Jackson about it. I said, listen, why don't you play him against Jacksonville? Just because the injury risk is so much less, because you know he's already going to be out X number of games. It's an opportunity to knock off the rust. I know it's a little goofy, and I don't know all the ins and outs with suspensions and appeals and everything else. Is he eligible to play in the preseason? And would you risk it, or would you do it just to get him on the field and get a look at him?
Well, once again, it comes down to whether or not he is banished and what the definition of indefinite is right now. Because if he's banished, then that can kick in immediately. And who knows how quickly, that would happen. Let's just say, for instance, the NFLPA, doesn't sue right now, and he is banished from the NFL, that they get this done relatively quickly, and he's banished by the first preseason game. He would not be able to participate in training camp at that point anymore, or play in the preseason games. It would be effective immediately, and he would be gone. So that's why I think it is important to try to figure out what the distinction is between the two. Because if he's suspended for a finite number of games, or maybe even the indefinite number, there is a world in which he can still practice through training camp, play in the preseason games, and all the things that come along with that type of suspension.
Mary Kay, do you think I conned myself into believing there'd be no appeal, so I'm conning myself into this too, that maybe the compromise is they either don't add any additional games, or maybe only go to 8, but add a massive fine. Is that realistic in any way, or no?
Well, I don't think the NFL would have gone to this extent to get 2 more games. I think they're going to try to get more than 2 for sure. And I do think that they want a substantial fine. And there are many different ways that you can work that out. Maybe you take some of the games from last year and add that into the suspension and take some money away from him from last year, so to speak. But I do think that they want him, to hurt a little bit in the pocketbook in this situation. They want some money out of him. They don't want just $57,500 per game for this. Once again, they believe that this is the most egregious violation of the personal conduct policy in the history of the NFL. They want the punishment to reflect that. So they want money to be part of it. Again, I think that Dan Graziano from ESPN had been reporting at one time that they would have settled for 12 games and an $8 million fine. So that tells you where they're going with the financial situation. I think he can expect some kind of fine.
First of all, I think banished is just such a great old-timey medieval word, like it's a witch or something like that we're getting out of our kingdom. But secondly, this will bring up a question. If say this got extended to 12 games or even the whole season, are you comfortable going into the season with old Jacoby and the Josh 1-2 punch, double Josh at quarterback, or are we going to do something about that situation?
I think at that point, they probably would, as an organization, have to put their heads together and really ask themselves if they can accomplish their goals this season, because the rest of the roster is ready to roll. And you have to make sure that you have that position right. And they would have to go back, maybe to the film room and decide, would Jimmy Garoppolo be better than Jacoby Brissett? Or
Yes.
is there anybody else that you can think of that, that would be able to go out there and win these games for you? And so, I don't think we can rule it out. It's not something that's been front burner for them. It's something that they have not really necessarily wanted to do. But they also did not think that the suspension was going to be much longer than 6 to 8 games. And I do believe they felt like they could get through 6 to 8 games and then finish the season off with Deshaun. If he's out for the entire season, or 12 games, or maybe even 10 games, I do think that you have to revisit it.
Well, Mary Kay, I just thought of a scenario. We was talking about the, what the policy is going to be and what the league is going to say and different things like that. So I was just thinking, what if the NFL Players Association said, you know what, I'm going to apply the old United States of America policy. I don't negotiate with terrorists. So here's what we're going to do. How's about I'm going to sue, and feel free to use this, Players Union. I'm going to sue you for breach of contract. I'm going to argue that your contract explicitly states that you will hold owners responsible, which is the reason why you did what you did with the Miami Dolphins yesterday. That's a little inside. I'm going to then say I want to file an injunction on a temporary restraining order so that they can't suspend Deshaun Watson. And then what I want to do is I kind of want to go scorched earth. So I kind of want to be like, okay, just to see if the policy was the same, and just to see if the actions are the same, because we're held to the same standard as the owners. I would like to see your information on what you did with Robert Kraft. And can I depose him too? Can I get a statement with him? And if that line of reasoning happens, do you think the NFL would be more apt to apply the 8 games and a fine, or continue with the process?
You know what? I think they will continue with the process. I think that the NFL would feel fairly confident that it can win in court. It won in court with Tom Brady and with Ezekiel Elliott, and they had to serve their suspensions. So if it's filed in New York, they probably will feel very confident about the outcome. And I'm sure the NFLPA will try to file it somewhere where they feel that they'll have a much better chance of winning. But when you're dealing with a corporation, when you're dealing with a private, entities, conduct policies or whatever policies, they will often side with the company. So I do think that the NFL will still proceed. They want to make a statement with this, and they're not going to stop. And the same thing with the NFLPA. The NFLPA, I'm sure, will file the suit.
Mary Kay, a bit of a gray cloud over the Browns fan base as of late. I think we can agree. Not the best party vibe we've got going on. How about just a little bit of positivity? Can you tell us just 1 or 2 positive things that you've seen at camp that have nothing to do with the Deshaun Watson situation to make us all feel better today?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, first of all, just defensively, they have this alpha dog competition going on, and I've been seeing batted passes. I'm seeing these guys try to punch the ball out, try to get interceptions. I think it's just going to be a dynamite defense. They know that they potentially are going to have to go out there and carry the team for a while. Now, I think that's a little bit of an overstatement, because when you have Nick Chubb and you have Kareem Hunt and when you have, David Njoku, Amari Cooper, it's not like, they're all chopped liver over there without Deshaun on the offense. There's still some really, really good offensive players and a great offensive line. But the defense is willing to take this on and carry this team to the extent that it has to. And I think when you look at some of the young guys that have the opportunity to really have amazing second seasons, there's so much reasons for optimism. When you look at Grant Delpit and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Greg Newsome, some of these guys that are just really ready to take off in their second year, I think this is a defense to be feared.
Mary Kay, when you look at Jacoby Brissett, I forgot my question. I'll be totally honest. I was trying to stall for time there because I had a good question. I'm like, remember it? Remember what you were going to ask Mary Kay? I started thinking about what I'm going to talk about next, the Jimmy Garoppolo, and I totally lost my question. So bad job out of me. I'm still stalling to try to make the question.
Do you want me to jump in?
I got a question.
Can I help?
Damn it, I had a good
saw
question.
Last week you had you mentioned that the Browns initially may have been interested in Russell Wilson.
Yes.
And then Russell Wilson said, hey, I'm not interested in Cleveland, so they pursued Deshaun Watson. How realistic were some of those conversations, and how far did they actually progress?
I don't know how deep they got into that or not, but I just know that was the level that they were aiming for. They were not looking for a Jimmy Garoppolo upgrade. They were looking for Russell Wilson. They were going for Deshaun Watson. They were thinking Super Bowl, and that was where they were going with that. So absolutely 100% they were interested. But Russell, he had designs on where he wanted to go, and, he ended up where he wanted to be. Mary
Kay, I finally remembered my question. Was wide receiver, because you mentioned Amari Cooper. And obviously he's banged up. They've had it seems like every wide receiver on the team has been banged up in this training camp. We already thought they needed another wide receiver. I know it's early in training camp, but are you surprised they still have not done anything? I mean, should we just be resigned to the fact that they are not going to add a veteran, or at some point might they still?
Well, the thing is right now, here's sort of how they feel. And that is they needed to bring in a couple of camp arms to make up for the guys that got injured. And they've done that. They signed 2 different young guys just to kind of come in, not necessarily to impact the 53-man roster,
Right.
but to help them get through this camp. Because, my goodness, Michael Woods and Michael Harley and Jamarcus Bradley are getting way too many reps. So, I think they really feel good about the fact that David will be back, that Anthony Schwartz will be back. He was running some sprints yesterday. Amari looks pretty good. I've always felt that they should add another veteran receiver. There are not that many guys out there right now, but some will shake free in the cuts. So I would be on the lookout for another veteran because, what would happen if Amari goes down for any length of time? He's pretty much an Iron Man, but you just never know. So I would add another veteran, and I would keep my eyes peeled for one to shake free sometime over the next month.
Mary Kay, great insight as always. I'm gonna get myself out to camp in a couple of weeks, so it'll be good to see you in person. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Mary Kay.
Hey, Mary Kay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Always great to chat with Mary Kay.
Really quick, some comments from YouTube. Got some comments here.
Oh, good.
All right.
Jay, it's all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody probably is in Cleveland right now.
Yes.
J. Dog Myers III says the NFL is sinking themselves. Jordan B is on the opposite end of the spectrum and says there's no path to victory here for Watson. Dr. Smooth with a V.
I trust him.
Yes, Dr. Smooth is smooth. Sue Robinson gave the NFL ammo to further punish them by saying it was the worst conduct ever before seen in the NFL. And then Sprout216 says, would it be better to use the cap for Jimmy G or use the cap to get more weapons for Jacoby to use?
Okay, now, I think I'm glad you ended it with that one, G, because I want to get to that. Because a few minutes ago, guys, I said, well, if they're going to suspend him for 12 games, it might be better for the Browns for him to be gone for the year to toll the contract. And after I said that, I said, you know what? I'm wrong about that. And here's why, and I want you guys' take on this. Ultimately, I think let's say it's 12 games, because there was reporting that the league was willing to go 12 games, okay? So let's say that ends up being what it is. Not the whole year, it's 12 games. Now, if Jacoby Brissett's the quarterback and he plays 12 games, they will probably not make the playoffs. That's what I think, okay? I want you guys to all chime in.
No,
that's what I think.
I can chime in now. Yeah,
Yes.
You're right.
Okay. But I'm thinking, okay, I will get Deshaun Watson back week 13. He'll play 5 regular season games. So what quarterback's going to give me the best chance to keep the Browns in contention through 12 games? And at that point, I would, if I'm the Browns, go get Jimmy Garoppolo, have Brissett as my backup, and I would hope that, Garoppolo's done a lot of winning. There's a lot of talent around him. I get it. Brissett's been here, but Garoppolo's the better quarterback. He's had a lot of success in the league. He's not a great talent, but I think they could stay afloat better through 12 games with Jimmy G, and then Watson rides in at the end of the year and hopefully gets them to the playoffs. And remember, all you have to do is punch your ticket. If they can punch their ticket and Watson's the quarterback, then they could win a Super Bowl.
3-quarterback platoon. You start with Jacoby because he knows the system. Jimmy's still coming off from an injury.
Yeah.
But you get Jimmy in here. He plays those first couple of cupcakes. Jacoby does. Then you work Jimmy into the system. Then he plays throughout Deshaun's suspension. This is the perfect system, folks. Exactly how it's supposed to go in the NFL. Now you get your third quarterback in there in the regular season, right in time for playoffs. We go to the Super Bowl and we're all partying.
Love it.
Love
it. What a story.
I think we figured it out. We're going home, everybody. That's the show.
Yeah! Jason, what say you on that?
Here's something to consider with Jimmy G. And the Browns have just not been high on him from the start. They've just not been high on Jimmy.
Yeah, but they got to be higher on him than Brissett.
Or Josh Rosen.
Agreed. Yes. No, I agree with that. But here's the other thing. If you're taking on that contract for this year, look at all that salary cap space right now that they're supposed to roll into next year. If you take on Jimmy G now, you're not rolling that space over. You're using it this year, and they need a lot of that space next year when Deshaun's contract goes up to $45 million. And again, we're assuming that we're just assuming that Deshaun's contract will count for this year, and next year counts for next year, and it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
I think that's an important consideration in all of this. Is the staggering number that Jimmy has? It's going to eat up a lot of their available cap space that I know they want to roll over into next year. So just something else to consider as we talk about
raining on my parade, raining on my three-quarterback parade.
I got to try to win now. I got all these players that are ready to win.
It's tough, Bull. Like, I'm with Jason. They just don't seem to be high. The Browns front office, I think the analytics that they have, I think that they really have a special system at which they look at what the quarterback position is doing and equating how well they're good. Are they good? They're bad? They're different? Yeah. Even when we thought that they would be into Baker, right? Like, hey, we look at his 2020. If you think about it, they might not even have liked his 2020. They may have said, we had to do all this just to get that. Put that energy, time, and play call. Jacoby Brissett, to me, it just seems like every time we bring up a quarterback or another quarterback, I thought to myself that Jimmy G was going to be a person that should be upgraded because he's won a lot of places. He's been to Super Bowls. He won in Lambeau, beat Aaron Rodgers. But it just seems like they like Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, I hear what you guys are saying, and Jason G, you're right about them not liking. Or, when it was talk about, but that was with Jimmy G replacing Baker. To me, Jimmy G and Baker are the same level of quarterback. Jimmy G's has just been a better winner overall because he's had better coaching and whatever. But, it's not about Jimmy versus Baker anymore. It's about Jimmy versus Brissett. Frankly, if I'm the Browns and again, this is a unique circumstance if it's a 12-game suspension. You're going to stick with Brissett with 6. Even if it's 8 at this point, you'd probably stick with Brissett. I think 12 takes it to another level. Mm-hmm. But, and if it's 12, if I can't get Jimmy G, I know this is crazy with everything they've been through already, and we've talked about this briefly before, half joking, but I am calling Drew Brees. I am calling Phillip Rivers. Mm-hmm. I'm calling anybody that I think is better than Jacoby Brissett because I got a very talented team, and I want to give it the best chance possible to be even if Watson has to go 5-0 for them to make the playoffs, at least give him and them their best shot possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'd be on the phone with anybody who can make them win right now. There's no point in sitting out this year while we've got all this talent on this roster, just sitting there waiting to go. In any way that you can improve at this point, that's not going to hurt your team in the long run from a salary cap perspective or anything like that. Any responsible way, and I trust them to do that. Yeah. Any responsible way that you can actually make them a winner this year or put them in the best position to, they owe it to the fan base to do that.
And by the way, if the salary cap's an issue, and I'm Andrew Berry, I'm going to Deshaun Watson. I'm saying, listen, Deshaun, we're changing your contract for next year. Yeah, you owe us this.
Happening. Actually, that's definitely not happening.
Well, they could not take away money, but restructure move it to next year. Restructure it.
Yeah, you could restructure.
That's what I'm saying, and he's going to be amenable to that.
Yeah, I think where we're at with this situation is I'd be fascinated to know because I always got a conspiracy theory. I'm sitting there thinking, what has Jimmy Haslam told Stefanski and Barry, right? If he's giving them carte blanche and says, now y'all good. We want to make this deal, and you know what we did to make the deal. It kind of fell apart on us, boys. You know what?
This one got away from us.
It got away from us a little bit. We gonna do what we can this year. We're going to roll that money over. We're going to punt, but we're not going to punt. Jason, is there such thing as punting but not punting on this joint? Just keep Brissett, run this football, see what the best you can do, and everybody come back next year. Kumbaya.
I don't know how you can trust Jimmy Haslam.
You can't.
If I'm Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. Because think about a year ago at this time or after Baker gets hurt, if you would have said, because it would be logical to think, oh, well, he's hurt, this year's kind of a wash, whatever. No, it's not. He got fired. They fired Baker. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to sit here now and say you can go to ownership and coaching and say, yeah, you know what, guys, it's okay. We're going to run it back next year. We're going to be good next year. You can't think that way, though, because
you can't.
The way that Jimmy blows with emotions and the way that he can change his mind, you just can't trust him.
This is a soap
opera.
Guys,
let me throw this out at you, too. First of all, Jimmy Haslam, as usual, is a clown. He embarrassed himself with that ridiculous statement. Did you guys all see the statement he put out?
It wasn't great.
Right, so
that was not great.
And by the way,
I didn't see it.
In the statement, let me just read it to you, okay? Throughout the process, Deshaun and his representatives have abided by the newly created and agreed-upon process for the NFLPA and the NFL to defer to the objective Judge Sue L. Robinson to comprehensively review all information and make their decision. We respect Judge Robinson's decision and at the same time empathize and understand that there have been many individuals triggered throughout this process. By the way, there is no way on earth Jimmy Haslam or D. Haslam have ever used the word triggered. They laugh when people use the word triggered. Everybody knows that.
Well, that's why I was going to say, Boldy, you actually think he wrote that?
No, he did not write that. He does no
terrible
chance.
Inclusion. That term's a terrible inclusion.
The only time people like Jimmy Haslam use that word is to roll their eyes at liberals. Otherwise, they don't do it. We know Deshaun is remorseful that the situation has caused much heartache to many, and he will continue the work needed to show he is on and off the field and will continue to support him. He doesn't care about these women. We all know that. Listen, it's football, it's business, we get it. But to some degree. But here's the thing. In this statement, either, I can say with 100% certainty, either he lied or he's saying Deshaun Watson is a liar.
Right.
Because he's saying in this statement, there it is. We can't read it there, but there it is.
It's all right.
He
Get out
says,
your jeweler's loop and get near your computer screen.
And I shouldn't say he because it says from the Haslams. Quote, we know Deshaun is remorseful that this situation has caused much heartache to many, and he will continue the work needed, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So either he's lying that Deshaun is remorseful, or he's saying Deshaun is lying, because Deshaun Watson publicly has never apologized, never shown remorse, because he says he's done nothing wrong. And if he truly believes and thinks he did nothing wrong, then what does he have to be remorseful for?
That's true.
So either
he did try and clean it up. Deshaun did try and clean up the second time that he met with the media and said that he was remorseful over the hard feelings and some of the angst that he's caused. You're right. He's always said he never did anything wrong, even though everyone else has said he did. But I think that's probably what that statement, that second time they ran Deshaun out in front of the media, was really to sort of clean up the missteps that he had from his introductory press conference.
This is why you don't. I don't understand it, man. This is why you don't talk. Like, I always listen. Where I come from, you say, "Hey, we ain't talking to the police." Nope, I didn't see nothing. We didn't see nothing. I did not. Don't ask me no questions. I gotta live here. The people's right around the corner. You don't. When you got an investigation going on, bro, you can't, you just come off looking crazy. At the end of the day, you're not going to win that, Jimmy Haslam. You say, look, it's an ongoing investigation. When it's over, I'll write it in a book or something. You just don't say nothing, bro.
Yeah, guys, we have our next guest. The great Robert Smith is with us, right? Mike?
Hey! There he goes.
Mike, you got to read or no? We don't have to do it.
We already did the Gridiron Guys.
That's right.
We just got to tell people that Robert Smith's joining us via the Gridiron Guys hotline.
There you go. And Robert was going to be in studio with us, which we really appreciate, but we're in extra COVID precaution right now. That's why we're separated here. So, unfortunately, we couldn't see Robert in person, but we appreciate him joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. And if I didn't get COVID in Chicago at Lollapalooza over the weekend, then I must be fine. So I'm triple vaxxed. So
yeah, me too.
I must be immune.
Hey, Robert, I told him, hey, listen, man, the OG is in town. I could have been at the house. They could have sucked me in. I'd have been right out the house wearing my hats, comfortable, eating during the break, turning away. Next time, just get me up out of here.
It's funny you mentioned that because I just had a run for some health food at the combo KFC and Taco Bell.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yourself right.
So
I know where that's at.
I got it sitting over here on the side. I'll make sure that I don't take any chomps during the segment.
We're happy if you want to eat during the interview. That's okay with us. Robert, obviously the Deshaun Watson situation is a mess. The league doesn't look good. He doesn't look good. The Browns don't look good. Fans are fighting with each other. It's a burden for everybody. It's, what do you make of this whole situation and where we are right now?
Well, what's most surprising to me in everything that's gone on here is that the Browns didn't retain Baker Mayfield. That's the most surprising part to me.
Yeah.
Maybe the relationship was just so fractured. I'm not in the building. I don't know that. But maybe the relationship was just so fractured. But you have him under contract for this year, and or you at least had to assume that it was going to be at least 6 games for Deshaun Watson. Now, I think what's really interesting here when we look at the situation now with the NFL appealing, if they do appeal, the union is likely to get some sort of injunctive relief, meaning that Deshaun Watson is going to be able to play right away. Is this just an attempt by the NFL to force the hand of Deshaun Watson and Rusty Hardin in this, his attorney, because the Browns are in a situation where, okay, do you start off the season with Jacoby Brissett and Dobbs and Rosen as your quarterbacks in that first 6 games, or for maybe if it's 8 games, if they get some sort of settlement, and they only have one division game in that first 6 games. So do you want Deshaun Watson there and a delayed suspension where you're going to have some sort of suspension, but do you roll the dice if you try and have him at the start of the season and then have him out when the schedule gets tougher and you're trying to make a playoff run? I think that's going to be really interesting to see here in the next couple of weeks, just kind of how that plays out, because ideally, if it was just the 6 games and Deshaun Watson wasn't around, the first 6 games, no division opponents, a easier part of the schedule, would you rather have him out then? Of course you would, but the league's kind of forcing the hand here.
Robert, I'm looking at it like this, man. Like, what the Browns are like, okay, Deshaun Watson, he's had a bunch of bad press. The only thing we know is we've heard about the cases. We've heard about that for 2 years. And the fact that he's been sitting out for a year. It'll be approaching 2 years since we saw him play. Do you think there's any level of, you know what, throw him out there. Let the fans see how good he is. Let them throw him, because once he plays, it can either be one or two things. People go crazy over here that say, I can't believe this dude is playing. This is crazy. Or on this side, oh my goodness, he's very good. I would like to see him play the regular season. What do you think people would fall on if they do get an injunction and he is playing games? How does that look for the league?
Well, here's the thing. I think the team doesn't really care. I shouldn't say they don't care, but they're not as concerned about what the fans would think about seeing him out there. They need to get him reps. Obviously, they need him playing in the preseason. You'd like to have him in live action in the regular season as well as soon as you can. But I don't think that they're concerned about any of that. There are just so many issues here, and it's not just getting him live game action. It's getting those other players the reps in training camp. And, training camp is just so different now than it was when I played. Now fortunately, I was with Denny Green all 8 years, and Denny was one of those guys, never went 2 padded practices in a day. Now, I believe they only get 11 padded practices through all of camp. And, of course, quarterbacks aren't taking hits anyways. And that's why I laugh when I'm on social media and I see all these shots of quarterbacks throwing the ball downfield and hitting these. Oh wow! He threw a pass to a receiver. Look, if a quarterback couldn't do that in training camp when they know they're not going to get a hit, then they wouldn't even be on the roster. So every NFL quarterback can make those kind of throws when the bullets aren't real. But when a quarterback knows they're going to get a hit, those things can look much different. So you want to be able to get him those reps. But you also want to get those backups, those reps. And people just don't understand just how different it is with different quarterbacks for the entire offense. I mean, especially those offensive linemen. The offensive linemen, the one advantage they have is a snap count. And people think that it's always the same cadence with different quarterbacks, but it's just not. If they're just half a step late or half a step early with the way that their cadence sounds to that offensive line, those guys are kind of rocked back on their heels, so it affects not just the pass game, but the run game. So this really affects everything. So I'm curious to see, kind of what the share of reps looks like over the next couple of weeks, and then, once the preseason games start, kind of how the division of reps goes there.
Robert, you're a Clevelander. You know what this fan base has been through. It hasn't been all flowers and chocolates, as you know. When we went 0-16 a few years back, did you think that it could get even more complicated and worse and harder to be a Browns fan? And how do you think the fan base is reacting? Are we handling it okay?
Yeah, well, I know it's been some tough times. And in all fairness and honesty, I did not grow up a Browns fan. And I don't even know if I should. Well, I'll just tell you, I grew up a Steelers fan.
Oh, my Lord. Not a big surprise.
No.
Now, hold on a second. On a second. Let me explain this.
Okay.
So my older brother, Scott, rest in peace, he was a Cowboys fan, okay? And my dad was doing a lot of other things, but now watching football. So I didn't really have that Browns base. But what I did have was my brother liked the Cowboys, so I'm like, I want to take the other side. So, the Super Bowls back then was always the Cowboys and the Steelers. So I took the Steelers side of the ledger. So I didn't grow up a Browns fan.
Convenient excuse from a Clevelander to follow Pittsburgh.
Well, let me tell you this. I went to St. Felicitas, the Catholic school. It's no longer there. But I remember singing the 12 Days of Christmas to like the Browns players. Of course, it was Brian Sipe, Don Cockcroft kicking, like all that kind of
Yep.
stuff. But I know what kind of fan base this is, and obviously you go from an 0-16 season a few years ago to a situation like this, and you keep saying, well, how can it get any worse, or when is it going to get better? That's why I say I'm just so intrigued to see kind of with the NFL forcing the hand here with this appeal. I think you look at the Ezekiel Elliott situation a few years ago with the Cowboys, and he played for the first 8 games, I believe it was, and then served that 6-game suspension that he did at that latter part of the year. So, do you want to put yourself in that kind of situation? And it's going to be really interesting how they deal with that. But I think, the Browns fans have been beat up so long. And you look at the situation with the Ravens leaving, or the Browns leaving and becoming the Ravens and winning a Super Bowl, and then an 0-16 season, and whether it was the fumble or the drive, all those kind of going.
Don't forget Johnny Manziel. Don't forget Johnny Manziel. Yeah,
I've seen that on social media where they have like 20 quarterback names, and that one's scratched out, that one's scratched out, that one's scratched out.
It's a fun thing to live through.
But hey, we're Clevelanders, and I think it's that blue collar mentality. It's not something that we just talk about. It's something that we live, I think, up here. So hey, it's professional football. It's the Browns. The real fans are going to be the real fans no matter what happens. And so I think they're dealing with it as best you can. It's uncertainty, and you control what you can control. And what you can control is you go out there and you root for them no matter what happens.
Robert, I was going to ask you about Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and trying to split backs as a running back, but I'm actually, as you were talking, I was actually thinking about something completely different that I want to get your opinion on. We were talking a couple weeks ago on the show about just guys getting to the professional league sooner. Obviously, you see it in the NBA, guys leaving after 1 year and they're fighting that and could go back to high school. When is somebody going to challenge the NFL rule? Because Maurice Claret obviously did a few years ago and lost. I don't think the NFL can win anymore. And I'm wondering, what do you think the odds are of, could a guy who's after his freshman year of college or after his sophomore year of college, is he physically big enough to compete in the NFL? And do you think anyone's going to challenge that rule anytime soon?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And, it was something that I had even considered when I sat out my second year at Ohio State, and was thinking about it at that point.
That's part of why I asked you. I remember that.
Yeah, and I think is the guy physically ready? I'm not sure. I mean, it's a lot different than the NBA in that regard. I think people talk about football being a contact sport. It's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. Basketball is a contact sport. And people can make that transition from high school into the NBA. So first of all, you're going to have somebody that's just an absolute physical freak, but then you're also going to have somebody that's willing to sit out, because it's likely going to take some time. This isn't the kind of case where, because the union, it's a rule that the union has implemented, and one, quite frankly, that I've never really agreed with. But I think that the intentions are good with the rule, but because the union has that rule and somebody would have to challenge it in court, they're likely to have to wait out. They're not going to just allow a player to get drafted and play while this is being decided. I just don't think that's the case. So, number one, you're going to need an absolute physical freak, and I think somebody that would be willing to sit out. And quite frankly, now with name, image, and likeness, and players being able to earn money in college, I think it's much less likely to happen, because guys are saying, hey, if I'm good enough to, if a guy's good enough to turn pro as soon as they graduate high school, they could earn some loot while they're in college. And I just don't think that there's that much of a desire on an individual player's part to want to have to go through all of that mess and all of the time that it would take to get something like that done.
you know, Robert, you look at the running back position, and it kind of piggybacks what Jason was talking about. You look at a running back, and he spends the most bulk of his career in high school. If you're a good running back, they run you to death. You're gonna get the ball you know that. You're gonna get the ball every play. They run wing T, option, whatever the case be. You get to the pros, they'll get to college. If you're a stud there, they're going to run you. And they're going to run you you take 3 years and maybe 4 years and you run in college. So now you've been running the football thousands of carries, 8 years before you can even get paid. And usually during the rookie scales, they don't draft running backs in the first round. Say you're a second round running back and now all of a sudden you don't get that 5th-year guarantee. So if you're a late bloomer, you're already at 28 by the time you even get an opportunity to get to your second contract. With that being said, do you believe it should be a different contract structure for running backs and say, hey, give me it doesn't count, of course, a salary cap, or you can do something where you can offer a running back more, because some of the best players and some of the most talented players that have made this league have been running backs. And just think if we don't get a chance to see some of those people moving forward because the game has changed and the wages have kind of shift people out.
You know, that's interesting, but I think it's probably more the other way now because, you know, when you talk about the game, even, you know, at the lower levels, and it really started at the lower levels. I think, you know, when you talk about the NFL and the NFL moving more to, you know, rules and systems of offense that are more conducive or pass heavy, you know, those were things that were coming out of, you know, the 7-on-7s, the spread offenses in high school and in college. So the running backs, I think, have been undervalued in the sense that the game has been more towards passing. And you look at what's happened with the wide receiver contracts this year in particular, I think it's an indication of just how the philosophy in the NFL and in football in general has changed. So it's become more pass heavy. I'm always going to be rooting for my running backs. And, you know, I love the days of eye football, and, you know, heavy sets where you're getting up there and you're banging, you're running ISO and, you know, pulling some linemen, running some heavy sets and really challenging and going downhill. But that's just not what football is now. So I think the running backs just aren't as valued as now and quite frankly just aren't taking the same kinds of hits. So that's beneficial for the running backs. I think that, you know, because the offenses have been more pass heavy and there've been more rotation at the running back position instead of having just a primary back that's carrying the ball, you know, Derrick Henry style. You just don't have too many teams that do that. So that means fewer hits at the high school level, at the college level, and at the pro level. So they have more of a chance to stick around the game, actually.
Robert, I know you are doing our top 5 today, which we're going to get to in a minute, which is the top 5 players you played with. This is just in the NFL, his top 5, right, Robert?
It's the top 5 toughest. Not just the top 5 players.
Top 5 toughest players you play with in the NFL. So I'm looking forward to that. But before we get to that, a guy I'm sure you know, I don't know how well you know him personally, but you certainly know who he is. Chuck Kyle, the legendary St. Ignatius high school football coach. This is his last year. He's going to be coaching his last season. I think he's been coaching there 113 years. Mm-hmm. So, and he was in studio with us, I think it was last week, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And he got to do a top 5 with us, and he picked the 5 best players that he ever coached against. And he's coached against who knows how many hundreds of players over the years. And one of the guys he picked in his top 5 is somebody you might know well. Let's hear what he had to say.
When he was a sophomore, you know, I remember him from track as a freshman. And I'm going, well, this kid has speed, but is he a football player? You know, we go, it was like the second game of the year. Is he a football player? We found him pretty early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? And we're uh-oh. So honestly, by the time now we're going to play him the next year, and we had a Robert Smith defense.
Did you really?
Wow. That's what we called it. Robert
Spies.
Smith defense.
How did you try to contain this guy?
All speed.
Well, for sure, you had on the wide side, you had a corner that was going to keep leverage because if he would hit and bounce outside, back. All right. So, and the linebacking, we did a couple things with the linebacking just to try to get an extra guy to the ball, off tackle and things like that. And
it wasn't easy.
we had to live with man coverage because you had to have the safeties reading the, okay, safety. I know you're 10 yards back, but could you read the blocking scheme and fill the gaps? But really, we called it the Robert Smith defense. So when you say memorable high school guy you played against, when you had to call a defense named after the guy.
That's it. He's got to be on the list.
I think I did it.
So, I mean, Robert, think about this guy is maybe the greatest high school football coach in the history of the state, and he thought so much of you and your talent that he named one of his defense the Robert Smith defense. That's unbelievable.
That's pretty cool. And, I remember playing in my sophomore year, and we won that game. And I think that one was at Baldwin Wallace as well. And then over the next 2 years, we lost 4 games my junior year and senior year, and all 4 of them were to Ignatius. So there was one regular season loss and one playoff loss. And actually, because of what they were doing defensively, and we knew this going into the game my senior year, I played quarterback going into that last game in the playoffs, and we had installed an option offense. And if I could throw the ball halfway decently, we probably would have won that game. But we had some great matchups against them. I just always had so much respect for Coach Kyle, and the way that the St. Ignatius teams played. The kind of guys, and we'll talk about the 5 toughest guys that I played with, but the kind of guys that would just take your head off and then help you up. That's just kind of guys they are.
It's got to feel nice knowing that you haunt the memories and nightmares of that living legend. So congratulations on that. You do know a thing or two about the running back position. Before we get to your top 5, we got to ask you, we have an embarrassment of riches on the Browns as far as the running game goes. I don't know if they're going to keep 5 running backs on the roster. It seems unlikely. Who do you think is going to be the odd man out there, and what do you think of the running back position for the Browns?
Well, I mean, it's really an incredible group. I mean, with DeEarnest, he's your 3rd guy, right? So I mean, obviously, having Nick and having Kareem, those guys are just awesome. And the thing I love about Nick too is just kind of his mindset. He's kind of got that Barry Sanders mindset. Just I'm going to show up and play, and coming up and tackling him, it's a business decision for a lot of guys. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to try and go at him. But I'm definitely going to try and go low for the most part, because he's got a guy, even with his explosiveness, he will run right over you. And both of them dangerous, out of the backfield as well. And I think that's going to be a big key. I mean, this is what the team, really is built to do. And I think why the Browns, may have been comfortable in letting Baker Mayfield go, because, they said, hey, we're built to run the ball. We have great defense, and we're going to be able to handle things even with Deshaun out. So just a really great group of players, and one that really fits the mentality of the city. And quite frankly, because so many defenses have gotten smaller to adapt to some of the passing schemes that they face, especially at the linebacker position, you come out in 21 personnel, you come out in 2 tight sets, and you can really do some damage, because personnel-wise, defenses, they don't have the same kind of guys. You don't see too many 6'5", 250-pound linebackers anymore. Guys who've got to be able to cover a lot of ground.
It's a great point. Yeah, maybe they could readjust. Teams adjust to how the defenses have. All right, Mikey, let's get to the top 5 from Robert. Looking forward to this one.
It is. And as always, the top 5 is brought to you by Roundstone Insurance. Roundstone offers a better alternative for affordable quality health care for more than a decade. Roundstone Insurance has been saving small and mid-sized businesses money, an average of 20%. Yeah, that's right, 20%. Contact us today to learn how you can get great health care benefits that your employees will love and save money too.
Roundstone, I get around. Roundstone, I get around.
Is that a Beach Boys?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was an attempt at the Beach Boys.
6.2.
Well, you know what? That made me think. I was just at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Are the Beach Boys in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
The Beach Boys are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Wow.
I don't know how I missed that. Out of all the, there are just so many exhibits and so many. Right? But, I missed the Beach Boys exhibit the other day.
The Beach Boys.
Legends.
I like the Beach Boys.
Yep, Pet Sounds, one of the
All
best
right.
albums of all time.
So top 5 toughest players that Robert's played with. Here we go.
Robert,
All
do you
right.
want to call him out?
Well, coming in at number 5, and I'm not saying this because he does the show, but because he's my guy, and I think that Cleveland Browns fans are familiar with him.
Oh, yeah.
Elroy, the talking machine, but the running machine as well. And I'm sure that you guys have heard this many times from Leroy, one of my favorite lines ever from the man, and he has a lot of lines. He said, "If you need 1 yard, I'll get you 3, and if you need 5 yards, I'll get you 3." That was the mentality that Leroy had, and he was going to try and bust some people up and hurt somebody and make them pay when they were going to come up and tackle him. Just a pleasure to play with him. A great person, and like so many of the guys, maybe all of these guys on the list, like these guys aren't psychopaths. Like they're just people that know how to turn that switch on, and they got just a different level of mean and tough on game day.
Yeah, he was a badass as a player, no doubt about it.
He'll like seeing that.
Yeah.
Good call.
He'll probably be offended he's not number 1.
Guaranteed.
He probably will be. All right, number 4.
And he'll talk for a half hour about it. Don't worry about that.
Definitely.
Lots of dramatic pauses, too.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Robert, number 4.
Number 4, and people are maybe surprised that he's going to be all the way down at number 4, but Johnny Muscle Randall.
Wow.
And Johnny was the first one that had that eye black all over his face, and you know what Johnny would do, man. He during the course of the week, like he would study a player's, like he would study the media guide for the opposite team, and he'd come up and he'd talk, specific junk to the guys on the offensive line, like, "Hey, how's Judy? How's Judy doing?" You know, his wife's guy's name, wife's name, Judy. Like, "Hey, how's Judy doing? How Batty? How the kids?" And he just talk all
That is
kinds
next
of
level.
stuff. But,
I love that.
I got to tell you, man, like at practice, the same way that he was in games, he was like that every single day in practice, and like. You just never had any doubts about where Johnny was on the practice field, man, because you always hear the just one of those kind of guys, man. He just got into the heads of offensive linemen no other defensive player, and boy, they just Johnny Muscle and motor, like just always going.
Wow. If he's number 4, I can't imagine the top 3. So let's get to number 3 here.
Yeah, number 3 was left tackle Todd Stewson. I think Todd came in '94 with me up there in Minnesota and was there for the next 6 years of my career. Cal Bear, but just mean, and that's why I love NFL linemen versus college linemen and high school linemen. The biggest difference is they're just mean, and they hate defensive linemen. They're sick of it. They're sick of all the stuff. Like in practice, you see all these fights break out in practice. Like those guys are just banging all year long. It goes all the way back to training camp. But I just remember Big Todd. You know, he's 6'4", 6'5", 330-ish, something like that. And I remember he had a knee injury, some ankle injuries, and just. I mean, he was one of those kind of guys, like, just tape it up and I'll go. But he and number 2 on the list, were playing right next to each other. And, I'll save the joke about that one or the story about that one until we bring him up.
He looks like a guy who's now living on a farm wearing a cat hat and like he's got a shotgun.
He has crazy eyes. He definitely has crazy eyes.
Is he doing that, or am I totally wrong about that?
You are totally wrong. It is an absolute polar opposite. Like he's doing computer analytics, and he's a Cal guy.
Oh yeah,
and,
that's true.
Yeah, and he's been doing that for a couple of years. Went back and got his master's degree, and like they're using all types of different algorithms and computer analytics to optimize different types of.
Good for him. So you never judge people based on how they look.
You can still have crazy eyes and be a computer analyst.
I don't know about that. He looked like he got bad offensive lineman gloves. His gloves look like they smell real bad. Like offensive lineman gloves. I'm a D lineman. Stop touching me, man. Your gloves, your Newmans.
They do that on purpose, probably.
That's exactly why you do it, though.
Yeah.
That's part of the head game. Like, hey, you're coming. You're going to get that punch in the face, and these gloves are going to stink. You better be
Smell
ready
me all day.
They're always wet. Like, why are you always wet?
They're
Like,
trying to mess with you. They're getting in your head.
Yeah.
It's dry out here. You sweating for no reason, man.
Let's get to number 2 here, Robert. What do we got who we got at number 2?
Number 2, Randall McDaniel. And I gotta tell you,
remember him.
Yeah.
one of the first. So the first mini camp that I went to, just amazed. Like, I'm sitting next to Roger Craig, right? Like, I'm like, oh my god! Like, not only am I in the same locker room, in the same meeting room, this is the guy that I'm going to be competing against this year. So I'm sitting next to Roger Craig. But I remember going out to practice later that day, and at the end of stretch, we'd have to stretch over on the defensive side of the field, and we'd run all the way over to the offensive side of the field. And I remember Randall McDaniel beat Roger Craig in that race over to the other field. So not only a tough guy, but just crazy athleticism. And Randall had this violent move where he would get guys and he would like throw them down. Like, he was a really good wrestler, as a lot of good offensive linemen, defensive linemen are. So he was really good understanding leverage and just freakish strength. And he was so good at it that he would get called for holding a lot because of that. But the funny thing is, these two, like, they would come back to the huddle, and they're lined up next to each other, and Stussy and Randall would come back to the huddle, and they'd be laughing in the huddle about something that they did to somebody on the defensive line, and they'd come back and they'd literally be laughing. And I'm like, hey man, he's not trying to get back at you. Like, he takes out all that stuff on me. Like, when I get held up in a pile, the guy you just knocked around and you're joking about now and laughing about, how you guys teamed up and destroyed him. That's the guy that's coming
junk or something. Yeah.
Keep that in mind, all right?
Yeah,
Man,
yeah.
And I'm not
get to number,
20 pounds.
We got to get to number 1. Let's see who number 1 is. Man, we've had a great list so far. Who's number 1?
Number 1, it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Chris Walsh was primarily a special teamer. Look up some video on him. Wow. There's a play from Arizona. This is before, like, the block back, like when it was legal. There's this play that they have on there with him just destroying this linebacker that's trying to make a play. But he was a special teams guy, one of those kind of guys that would literally knock himself out just to make sure that he was going to try and knock you out. And he just did not care. And that's the thing is, if you're not scared, it doesn't, or if you don't have fear, then you can't be brave. And if you're a big guy, yes, you're tough. But if you're a small guy and you're doing this kind of stuff, a guy that's undersized, you're just a different kind of tough. And I've dislocated elbows and, all kinds of stuff that he just got up and would get right back in the game. Unbelievable.
Wow. Great list, Robert. Man, that is an awesome list. Those are Robert Smith's 5 toughest teammates.
He'd know.
I got to be honest, the last guy, I don't even remember him.
That's the best picture we had right there.
There's no picture, but, you know better than I. But that's an awesome list and great stories, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us, as always.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks,
See you
Robert.
soon.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it.
Great to have
Thanks,
you. Too bad we
Robert.
couldn't have him in studio. That would have been awesome.
Next
it was
time.
still great having him, obviously, on the show today, and it was an awesome list. And, guys, it's now time for Good Bet, Bad Bet.
All right.
How do we do yesterday, Mike?
Yesterday, Bull, you went 2-1.
Uh-oh.
G. Bush, 0-3 for the second straight day.
I feel like there's something wrong here. There's something to miss. Let's see these totals.
I
double checked. These are correct.
Wow, look at the domination that I had. Now, Mike is still the best percentage-wise.
Mm-hmm. Limited sample, though.
But in the big sample group,
yeah,
I am dominating at the moment.
You really are.
And we finally have some football bets tonight,
Yes.
which is what this whole segment was designed for.
That's true.
It has been waiting for football and basketball.
And when I go 3-0 today, I'll be the first one to 100.
Well, that'll be great.
Let's get into it. The first game is baseball, though.
Yes.
Astros, well, they're favored by – I said that wrong to Anthony. They are favored by a 1.5.
Yes, of
against
course.
the Guardians.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
We all agree. Good bet. We don't have to argue with that.
No,
Yeah.
it's
Okay, let's go to the next one. Anthony, that was not you. That was me. Next one.
Way to own the culpability for that.
And also,
by the way, you do say we have football, but it's not really football. It's preseason football.
it's real football tonight,
And the teams are
It is
trash.
2 teams.
Yeah, but like it's
Great
all
uniforms.
backups. You don't know who's,
Yeah, no one's really
it's
playing.
hard to predict. It's a total crap.
Also, before we do this, Polk, I added your record wrong yesterday. It has been re-amended.
Oh, thank God.
I gave you your win back, so
You see all these errors, man. I'm gonna call it. I gotta call the arbiter in here, bro.
Mike is
Let's get Sue Robinson in here to rule on this.
Yeah, and then it could be overruled by Mike again.
Okay, second bet. Let's pull it back up. Jaguars underdogs. They are getting 2.5 points tonight against the Raiders. Jay
was
here.
well. I mean, how do you predict preseason football? However, I'm assuming that the Raiders, since the Raiders are a better team than the Jaguars, that their backups will be better than the Jaguars' backups, and so that's why they're going to win the game.
I guess that's
that's all you can do.
I guess. Yeah. What do you say?
Kyle Sloter, the preseason god, is on the Jaguars.
Is it Sloter? Is that actually how
Kyle
you pronounce
Sloter,
it?
the
It's not
backup
Slaughter?
quarterback, preseason god. He's putting up big numbers, which is why the next bet was over 30.5 total points.
Oh, of course it
in
was.
the Jaguars-Raiders game tonight.
Gee, you had bad bet on this.
I think it's going to get sloppy.
Low-scoring preseason game.
Man, it's gonna be 6-3.
There's going to be some defense will score.
6-3.
That's what's going to happen. There's going to be some
I'm
bad
with Mike.
turnovers.
I see a defensive score in this one.
It's going to be some bad turnovers. It's going to be a disaster.
Short
Hopefully a
fields.
high-scoring disaster.
Yes.
Bull's going to go 3-0.
Let's go.
Be the
Let's
first
go.
100.
Let's go. That's
Yep.
good bet, bad bet.
That was good bet, bad bet. We're going to run through a couple of last things real quick. Tony
Yeah.
Buzbee is holding a press conference.
Before that, I did see this breaking news. Deontay Johnson, Steelers wide receiver,
He just got paid.
just signed a 2-year extension. So he was going to be a free agent at the end of 22. And the Steelers don't often lock up their wide receivers.
Yeah.
They don't spend a lot of money. They let guys go, and they usually do nothing elsewhere. But 2-year extension for Deontay Johnson, so they got him for at least 3 more years. You mentioned the Buzbee press conference.
Buzbee speaking today at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
We don't exactly know what he's going to address. A lot of the terms of the settlements are confidential.
Yeah.
But it is newsworthy because it'll be the first time Buzbee has spoken publicly since he's gone out.
It is.
Let's let Jason start, though. He's legal
What do you think,
expert.
Jason?
please.
Why do you think he's doing this?
Because I don't give a rat's ass what he has to say.
I care
I was
why
a little
he's doing
curious. I
Yeah.
don't have a very good answer on this one because I saw it come across and thought, well, what's he got to say? There's only one case left, right? All the others settled. Unless he's going to come out today and applaud the NFL for appealing because he wants more than 6 games for Deshaun. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I'm kind of curious too. He's got to have a reason for calling this, but I just don't know what it is.
I think you're right, Jason. I think he's going to come out. He seems to be not afraid of the cameras very much. He likes
Definitely
his
not.
own voice. He likes being on TV. And now he
yeah.
has this opportunity to come out and say, as I do for all my clients, here's my website. It's available at the bottom of the screen. I am getting justice. The NFL is doing the right thing. I think that's what he's going to be doing. I don't think it's going to be anything new, but we'll see.
G, any thoughts on this? Concerns, questions?
Well, I don't know what he was really going to say, but I'm interested in what he says about the Houston Texans. I would like to know that.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to comment on that. I mean, I've said it before. He looked. Do we have a picture of Buzbee we can put up or no?
We didn't say that in the archive library. Maybe we should add it to it.
Fair enough. I've said before, he looks like the lawyer for the Russian mob. Mm-hmm. And so maybe this is unrelated to Deshaun Watson. Maybe there's some Russian mobsters.
Maybe it's the Brittany Griner. She just got sentenced to 9.5 years.
Well, she's not in the mob, though. But did she get sentenced to 9.5 years?
So she got,
according to China, she is in the mob.
So hold on. She got 9.5 years?
She got 9.5 years. That came out today. But if you read stuff, apparently this is
Russia's being real bad about
it. It's a negotiation.
Yeah, it's a negotiation.
Boy,
it was expected. This was not a surprise.
Yeah, we're gonna trade her to Russia for some gun runner or something like that.
Can we trade Trump
we'll get her back.
for Brittany Griner?
No, I don't know if they go for that, but
they're buddies. Him and
we'll see.
Don't you know Trump is unprosecutable?
All right,
but we can trade him.
Golf joke. I don't have the book.
I thought you left it.
I forgot it. I forgot it at home. I'm sorry.
We also got to talk LeBron real quick, especially with Jason here.
Yeah.
Jason, today's the first day LeBron can re-sign with the Lakers. And if he doesn't, what does that mean?
It means it's just the silly season's upon us. I've said all along I expect him to sign at some point. It doesn't have to be today, but I do expect him to sign an extension with the Lakers. But if we get to the start of the season and he hasn't signed yet, it's LeBron's silly season, and we've all lived it. There's going to be stories all year long about where's he going next? Is he going to stay? And it's a leverage play for him. He's keeping pressure on the Lakers to do what he wants them to do, and it's the hammer that he holds. If you don't do this, I'm leaving. He's done it before. multiple times.
Yeah.
And we'll see. Like I've maintained all along, and I'll continue to say it. It's buckle up. If he doesn't sign it by the start of the season, buckle up, because things are going to get weird. They always do, even at 38.
Jason Lloyd of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show and The Athletic has just broken news that LeBron James is likely to sign with the Cleveland Cavaliers following this year. Thank you, Jason.
People are going to take that seriously.
Thank you, Jason.
Start getting some jerseys printed.
Lord, please no.
Let me ask Mike this, because Mike is I think the biggest Cavs fan on this show.
Yeah, Jason knows more about him, but he doesn't like him as much as I do.
Jason's a reporter for the Cavs.
I know.
You're a big Cavs fan. Sure. As a Cavs fan, down deep, if you're honest with yourself, are you expecting LeBron to come back? Are you hoping, or is he not even on the radar?
Because I am so familiar with this guy now, and his motivations and how his mind seems to work and everything, he is nothing else. If you really think about it, he's pretty predictable. He follows like a pattern. And I think that Jason nailed it right now. I think that he recognizes that he's got leverage right now. He recognizes he's got the eye of the media. He still likes that. He's using this as a way to have. He's manipulating this the Lakers in a way to say, do what I want. And so I'm used to this game. And I don't think he has like some ultimate plan necessarily. I think he'll adjust. It wouldn't surprise me in any way if he ended up back on this Cavaliers team. I feel like that seems like something that would be a part of his legacy. If he were writing out, he sees his life in a way as a Disney movie, and he thinks about legacy. And I do think that it's a fun conclusion to the LeBron James tale, or at least another fun chapter is him coming back one more time. And I think he thinks about things like that. So it wouldn't shock me if he came back, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he went to the 76ers for some reason and played with a bunch of his friends there. I have no idea.
Guys, I said
no. He's not going to do that. It would be Cleveland or LA. Yeah. I don't think he's going anywhere else. And Bull, I'll let you jump in, but one thing real quick. Obviously his entire life is in LA. His kids are happy in LA. Savannah's happy in LA. They seem to love that LA life. That's why I would be surprised if he left. I will just throw out 2012, his second year in Miami, when he came back to Cleveland. He was asked if he would ever come back, and he said, I would love to play there again if the fans would have me. And then 2 years later, he was back. And then All-Star Weekend this year, I asked him, would he ever consider coming back? And he said, I wouldn't close the door on that. Just throwing that out there. He planted the seeds before and then he did come back.
He could have said no.
He started walking it back as soon as he got back to LA. The conversation I had with him, he started walking it back almost instantly when he got back to LA, because I think he realized how angry everyone in LA was at him. Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka and everyone was really kind of aggravated with the comments that he made while he was here. So I still tend to believe he will finish his career in LA, but buckle up, because things are going to get weird if he doesn't sign it.
Guys, don't you think as a Cavs fan, if you're hopeful that LeBron will come back, and I am. By the way, I'll reiterate, and I've already mentioned this on this show, but 6 months ago on the radio, or 7 months ago, whenever it was, I made one of the all-time dumb statements when I said I wouldn't want LeBron back.
Yeah.
One of the all-time dumb statements.
We remember.
And what's even more amazing about that is that the majority of the fans on Twitter and the phones agreed with me. So they were as dumb as I was.
Those are the fans on Twitter and the phones.
Now, I've, of course, realized, oh, my God, that's the dumbest thing I've ever said on the radio, and I've said plenty of dumb things.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, of course, I'd want him back, especially as a free agent, where you wouldn't have to give up anything to get him. So I think as a Cavs fan, don't you have to be rooting for the Lakers to not be able to acquire Durant or Kyrie? Because if they get those guys, it's more likely that he stays? Or is that not true?
No, I think that's very true. I think I've said that. I think if Kyrie winds up with the Lakers, that kind of seals the deal on LeBron. I would think that he would stay there. And again, I said this before, but his second to last year in Cleveland, when we were in New Orleans and he burned them down to the ground, the Cavs, and said they were a top-heavy roster, and just called out David Griffin and everyone else and said they need playmakers, they got to make changes. At the end of his rant, he said it would be different if I wasn't still in championship mode, but I'm still playing at a high level. And that's the question that I have now is he still hunting rings? If he's hunting rings, unless they get KD or Kyrie, he's got to leave, because I don't see a path to LA getting back another championship. If he's content to just ride it out in LA and ride out his last few years there, then you've earned it, man. Then go ahead, ride it out, finish your career there, live in the sunshine, make movies, produce, do whatever you want to do. And I don't have the answer to that question. If he's still hunting rings, if he still wants more, or if he's content with what he's got.
You know, I've always thought this, Jason. Like, it's just different. I've tried it before. We've all done things, right? You know, you move away from home. You do a lot of different things. You're famous. You're rich. I mean, you're a billionaire now. Like, one of the things I thought about his pursuit to go to LA was for him to get the billionaire status title, right? So now you look at it and it's like, okay, you want your son to play. How cool would it be for you to play with your son back where you was born or where you were at? And I just don't think, in LA, this is the crazy thing about it. It feels different. Like, you know, Kobe and Magic and Shaq isn't even really mentioned like that.
He's never going to reach that status in LA.
Never going to get. But here, he can come back 6 times, and he still could be competitive with the roster that they got. And
competitive? They'd be the favorites to win it all, wouldn't they? As all the NBA teams are currently constituted, right. I know it'll be a year later, so things could change. But if you look at every NBA roster right now, and you took LeBron and put it on the Cavs, aren't they the favorites to win it all?
We could use a small forward. That'd be all right.
That'd be crazy.
I mean, Go ahead, Jason. What do you think?
Are they the favorites? I mean, they're one of the favorites. I mean, he's 38. He has had a lot of injuries the last couple of years. It's hard for him to make it through a full season now. But certainly, they're one of the top contenders. I mean, that's the thing. When he came back the first time, nobody saw the Warriors coming. You know, the whole thing looked wide open for Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And I don't see another powerhouse dynasty. I mean, I know the Warriors just won again, and they're still a threat every year. But I don't see that unbeatable team in the NBA anymore. Yeah. It's a fun thing to talk about. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if it happens or
He's
not.
38.
I still tend to think he stays there.
There's no smarter player, though. There's no player that can adjust their game
He's the Tom
better.
Brady of the NBA. It's the same thing.
He can adjust his game to the players around him. He knows how to make everyone around him better.
Right.
He brings the seniority. He brings that sense of that veteran.
He averaged 30.
He averaged 30.
He don't even have to play.
He could have won the scoring title this year if he wanted.
Sit him for half the regular season. I don't care.
That's what he did. That's what he did when he was here, pretty much. He just kind of.
That's it. He's coming back. We already decided.
Bring him back.
Let's go. Yes, sir. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that.
I don't want Kyrie though. I don't want Kyrie. Not on this team.
We can't have Deshaun Watson. He's out of here. Bring LeBron back. This is unacceptable. We need something.
Sue Robinson, send LeBron here as part of the settlement.
You're right. But Jason, just to reiterate, you think it's either Lakers, Cavs. You don't see any other situation.
I don't think he would go. I don't think he would go anywhere else.
Talk about his kid for a second, because they don't get to pick where his kid goes, and he wants to play with his kid.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Bronny's improving too, isn't he? Hasn't he moved up the rankings a little bit?
And the younger one is 6'6".
Wow. Look at them.
Yeah, Bryce.
Package all of them up.
I don't think LeBron can hang around the NBA. I don't think he will hang around the NBA long enough for Bryce to come up and play with them.
So our best case scenario,
doesn't really talk about Bryce.
Sorry, our best case scenario is that Bronny is kind of trash, because then the Cavs can overdraft him the way,
20
picks. In the exact way they did it with Mobley's brother, where we're just like, but he can come and pal around. We probably overdrafted Mobley's brother just to scare. So I hope Bronny's trash, so that the Cavs can draft him, and then LeBron can come and play with him, and he'll be happy to play with his son. If Bronny's good, we're screwed.
We did not condone that. Your son Bronny is dope.
Well, no, we're not screwed because Rich Paul controls the entire NBA.
Right.
Rich Paul, why does that sound wrong in
That's
my head?
exactly right.
Yeah.
It's Rich Paul,
yeah,
right?
That's true.
What's that?
In my brain, Rich Paul sounds wrong. I don't know why. Mm-hmm. He controls the NBA. Unless Bronny's a superstar, even if he's just an average guy, he can pressure teams not to draft him, can't he, Jason?
Yeah, that's exactly how it's going to go.
Yeah.
Rich will just say, don't, because he's not a top prospect.
Right.
Bronny,
That's what I like to hear.
So you can... So Rich will just tell
trash.
teams, Rich will tell teams, if you want to deal with me and my clients in the future, don't screw with us on this one. Let him go to LA. It happens all the time.
No, LA, Cleveland, Jason. Get it right.
Most powerful agents.
Mm-hmm. Cleveland, not LA.
We'll see. We'll see. The silly season begins today.
Let's get some tampering going. Let's get some tampering going.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. Let's get to our final takes. Jason, you're going to start us off today, final takes. Hopefully you're prepared for it. If you're not, you got to make it up as go. Here we go. You're up.
Well, I totally forgot, so I'm going to make it up as we go, but luckily I got a good one. I was really surprised that the Guardians didn't make any moves at the trade deadline, anything significant. I've been talking about it for 6 months that the 40-man roster needs rebalance and the logjam, and they got to start moving these guys for prospects. I really thought they would get something done, and they haven't. And I don't know if teams realize the jam that they're in, so they're putting an even higher price tag on it. But you've seen teams like the Padres over the last few years make these types of deals. And the Guardians haven't been able to pull the trigger. They're running out of time. And I think it's going to be an active winter this year for them. And they've got to start figuring out and bundling some guys. I think Sean Murphy would look great in a Guardians uniform. I'm curious to know. I don't know yet what the price tag was, what Oakland wanted for him. Espino, the Nationals wanted Espino as the starting price on Soto. So, they don't want to move on from Espino, but they're going to have to start making some hard decisions and giving up some guys that they love, really, and start rebalancing this roster and start getting some impact bats to fill in some of the holes that they have. They've had a remarkable season. They're playing well better than we thought they could, than I thought they could. But it's getting time. And after this season, I think you're going to see really active movement that I thought we would have seen at the trade deadline.
G. Bush.
Let's
agree with you, Jason, by the way, of course.
So let's get off into this, man. This is a PSA for your boy Tyvis Powell. Yeah, Tyvis, man, I've been seeing you come through the studio, man. Your star is rising. You on the Big Ten Network. Mm-hmm. You moving or shaking. You doing sideline reporting and color commentating. Listen. I always thought that you was gonna be that dude, man. I'm really behind you. But as far as this competition is going on, see, you've been coming to the studio with all these kicks, all of these shoes with your beard all lined up. Perfect. You got all kind of Duke and mascara in your beard. The beard look good. I can't get that off. But what I can get off is these shoes. I'm telling you, you're already handicapped a little bit. See, you got NFL checks. You got NFL checks. I was on public assistance before I did this show.
Right.
I was on public assistance. I was in the food line. So here's what we're going to do. Come September, you're going to have to compete. See, the people's champion, I don't fold. You know what? I don't move. I don't bend. And what you're going to have to realize is you can't repeat nothing. When you come in here, one day, I bet not see no repeats, Tyvis. I've already downloaded how many pairs of J's you got. I'm looking at it. Just think. September coming. I got my student layaway. It's like I got 3 layaways. TJ Maxx, Burlington, Value City, Marshalls. Mm-hmm. We ready to go. Don't get it twisted, too. And by the way, you need to step your accessory game up, too, man. Don't be coming in here with your wrist all naked.
Shots fired.
Naked. Well, you need to have accessories, too. Don't come in here half-stepping, bro. Hey, Mike Polk will get with you. You could go thrifting and get you a bargain.
Get you a nice dead lady's necklace.
Right. Pearls.
That's what it's there for.
Tyvis, I'm coming for you, sucker. Mm-hmm. I'm coming for you.
Aren't you glad that just based on culture, we're completely out of this shoe game and no one's even judging my New Balance right now because they're just like, what do we expect? Look at him. Yeah, who cares?
He's an awkward white dude.
Good point. Yeah. I'm glad I don't have that sickness.
Yeah.
Okay. So, speaking of people who are just trying to get better out there and are being held back, I gotta give just like a word to a little bit of unfortunate news. And I'm talking about my man, Iman Shumpert. I'm talking about a champion with the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016. Can we show the graphic? He just got in a little bit of trouble. He was found with just a little bit of extra marijuana on him while at a Texas airport, just trying to fly back to California. He did have over 6 ounces of marijuana, which, if you're not familiar with that is about a book bag full of marijuana that Shumpert was trying to travel with. Like a solid, like not just a Jansport, it's in the pockets too, not just the main compartment. 6 ounces, over 6 ounces is a lot of weed, and I don't know why he is traveling with that much weed, but it's irrelevant, okay? It's unfortunate. It's legal in some states, it's not legal in others, and now Iman's in a little bit of trouble. You leave Shump alone. We've settled this weed thing, everybody, all right? It's even legal in Ohio medically, and luckily, like, many of us have a lot of the ailments that just happen to line up with it. So right now, that poor man who just was trying to get back to California to see his daughter, and he had 6 ounces of weed on him in a backpack. That's all he wanted to do, and you got to stop him and trouble him along the way. This is a man who should be exempt from any sort of legal problems right now that aren't disgusting and really vile. This guy helped win us our first championship in 52 years in this town, and that should carry some weight as far as I'm concerned. Not only he saved us, he was part of the reason. I remember your defense, just so you know. Maybe other people don't. We all talk about LeBron's block and everything like that. Shump, you were there, and I appreciate that. If you want to take her easy right now with a book bag full of weed, that is your right. Not only are you an NBA champion, you are also a Dancing with the Stars champion. The first NBA player who was a champion on Dancing with the Stars. That was just last year. I don't know what you were on when you did it, but you looked amazing, and I'm proud of you. Let Shump go. Free him. It's only a book bag full of weed. Nobody gets hurt. It wasn't a bunch of guns or knives. You let Shump free. He earned that sort of freedom.
Let Shump go.
Let him go. Let Shump go.
Hey, real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick. Dave McMenamin was on that flight with Shump the next day out of Dallas. And he said he was there for a birthday party, so I guess that was the party.
He's just trying to go to a birthday party.
I also heard that President Biden is negotiating with Ted Cruz and Abbott.
Yeah.
Oh, good, to free him.
To free him from Texas.
Yep, that's great. Fantastic.
Hasn't Texas left the union yet? Can we get rid of them?
They're working on it.
Can we cut them out? Give them to Mexico. Let Mexico pay for it. All right, my final thought. Yesterday, actually, it was 2 days ago, on Tuesday, we lost, in my opinion, the greatest broadcaster of all time, and that was 95-year-old Vin Scully. 94? Vin Scully, like, when I was a kid, I always wanted to do something in sports. When I was a young kid, I figured everybody in my family was a teacher, so I thought I'd probably just be a gym teacher or something like that, right? But then as I got to like 8 or 9 or 10, whatever it was, I was like, I got to do something really in sports. And I didn't even think about being a sports talk show host because in 1980, I didn't even know there was such a thing. There certainly wasn't that in New York. And before I ever thought about being a sports talk show host, all I wanted to do was baseball play-by-play. That was my only dream as a kid. I used to play, for those of you who love baseball, there were board games, dice games called Stratomatic, which is still around, Pursue the Pennant. There was a bunch of games. And I would sit and I'd create my teams and I'd roll the dice and I'd call the games as if I were doing play-by-play. And as a young man, you know, growing up in New York in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have cable TV. I don't think I had cable TV till I was in my 20s. I don't even think cable TV was available in Brooklyn, where I lived. So what did we do? Well, you had your 6 local channels, and we had good broadcasters in New York. But then I'd try to pick up other guys on the radio. But I never heard Vin Scully initially as a young kid. I would hear the great broadcasters in New York, like Bob Murphy, Bill White, Phil Rizzuto. I would listen to Harry Callis out of Philadelphia, who's great. Obviously, we have tremendous play-by-play guys here, not only now in Cleveland, but in the history. Cleveland is very rich with great play-by-play guys, and I love them all. But nobody painted the picture and told the story better than Vin Scully. Eventually, he was on the national scene. He did Major League Baseball. He did the World Series. He did called NFL games. He did it all. And the way he never felt rushed. You never felt like he was being phony. He was telling stories, and his timing was immaculate. And he made you feel like what you were watching was the most important thing you could ever be possibly watching. There's historic moments that go. Remember, this guy he just stopped calling Dodger games 6 years ago. He was calling Dodgers games when they were in Brooklyn, okay?
Yeah.
They left Brooklyn in the 50s. Vin Scully was magnificent as the Dodgers broadcaster, national broadcaster. Some of the things that I remember, of course, not that I was alive for this, but I remember listening back to over the years. The Sandy Koufax perfect game. He, of course, the very famous call that people remember of Hank Aaron setting the home run record is Milo Hamilton, who was the broadcaster for the Braves. But there's Vin Scully. They were playing the Dodgers, and so Vin Scully has a call of that one. And it's really, go listen to Vin Scully's call of Hank Aaron's record-setting home run. I don't know if everybody's heard it. You got to hear it. It's magnificent. I won't even do it justice, so I won't say it because I'm going to try to do one of his calls and I'm going to ruin it. But on and on the list goes. There's amazing. But the all-time, I think when you think of Vin Scully more than anything else, it's the home run by Kirk Gibson in the World Series. And he does this whole preamble because Gibson was hurt. Gibson was a great player playing for the Dodgers. He was late in his career. He was hurt. He was not in the lineup that day. He comes off the bench. He's hobbling to the plate. And Scully's doing this whole setup to his at-bat, obviously not knowing what was going to happen. And this magnificent build-up the Dodgers are using their one lotto ticket or whatever, I can't remember the exact word he used before that. And then deep to right, and I'm going to try to do it, but it's terrible. It's a fly ball deep to right field. And she's gone. A home run for Gibson. And the Dodgers have won the game 5-4. I can't believe what I just saw. That was a terrible impression. I sounded nothing like that.
You gave it a good effort.
I sounded nothing, but that's what he said. And I'll never forget that call. I almost cried. And over the years, until he retired after 2016, I would get the MLB extra innings, and I would watch Dodger games just to hear Vin Scully still call games. And he did them for years by himself. Not because he was arrogant and didn't want somebody with him, but it was because, I don't know. Maybe
he loved it, and he was good at it.
Yeah, he was just amazing. Nobody did baseball better. And I think he was voted by, I don't know who voted this, but he was voted as the best sports broadcaster ever. I think he is.
Wow.
I don't think there's any doubt.
Nice tribute.
There you go.
Any arguments, Jace?
No, and in fact, he had the Dwight Clark call of the catch as well that a lot of people
Oh, yeah, good call.
He was doing NFL back in the day.
That's true.
Cowboys 49ers, that was him on the call of that.
I did not know that till that tweet made the round on Twitter after
Yeah,
he
yeah,
passed
yeah.
away, and I learned, and I was like, I can't believe
Oh, I
Vin
didn't see
Scully.
that.
Two things.
And I didn't mention Tom Hamilton or Jim Donovan by name, so I should have. But we've had great broadcasts.
And Joe Tate. Let's not forget
And
Joe Tate.
of course.
Love Joe
Yes.
Tate.
Two things before we
Yeah.
go. G. Bush, in response to your final take, I got a text from Tyvis. I'd like to read on air. He says, quote, "Gee, I'm never going to repeat shoes this year, and I wear a chain all the time. I just never have it out because I'm not flashy."
He's not flashy, but he play in every league. I should have been a baseball player. Hey, you got to wear it.
Have you ever met anyone with more confidence than Tyvis?
It seems genuine, too. It's horrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Horrifying.
Have you seen people from Ohio State?
Yeah, it's true.
They
Got
all think they're great.
OSU swagger.
All of them.
Yep.
That
We
Ohio
are
State
the
arrogance.
The
Yeah.
Buckeyes, right?
And one more thing.
Yes.
Tomorrow, DeQuell Jackson, Carlos Baerga.
Woo-hoo.
I'm
Nice
sad that
lineup.
I'm missing that.
Nice lineup.
You guys will have fun with him. Carlos is great. I'm sad I'm missing it. I'm going to be on vacation, so I'm off for a week. I'll be back next Friday, so you guys have a great time without me. I will miss you all.
Do not get sick. Get yourself
Oh, God.
together.
I'm getting on a plane. My plane leaves in 5 hours. I cannot get sick.
Yes.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We didn't go to Alabama for vacation, you moron. We stopped there on the way down. We went
Wait
to
a
New
second.
Orleans. We were going to New Orleans for a day, and then we went to Destin for a week on the beach. Nobody goes to
Tell him,
Alabama
Jason.
for vacation. Come on.
Okay.
Tell him, Jason.
I brought that up 2 hours ago. You waited 2 hours to get
He's
to
been
that?
sitting on that the whole time.
While we were moving, the show was moving.
Yeah,
I
it
just
never
thought-
really, it was never an
Did I
opportune
say
time.
you went on vacation there or that you you did go there?
You specifically said he was on vacation in Alabama.
Oh, I said specifically vacation?
You did say
Yeah, yeah.
specifically.
Well, it's funnier if I say you're specifically in vacation there.
I love that that's what insulted you more than anything. Someone thinking you might go on
Yes.
vacation to Alabama.
It is embarrassing to go to Alabama on
Alabama.
vacation. Well, why the hell would you go to Alabama on vacation?
I don't know.
No, we were
Maybe
just,
you're from
we stopped
Mississippi?
in Tuscaloosa on the way down.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you all tomorrow on the ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Not me, though. I won't be here. See ya. Vin Frank.
Peace.
I got to urinate.
Urination. 103.